Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tarah Wheeler.
Have a wonderful week, folks. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, and I am absolutely thrilled to be able to talk with you once again this glorious Thursday at 11 a.m. in full effing glam, as Adele would say. It's a pleasure and a joy this week to bring to you Philip Wylie, a friend and colleague, and I get a chance to talk with you about how amazing he is in this cybersecurity office hours. So, Philip Wylie is a cybersecurity professional with over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, with over 10 years of his career in offensive security. Prior to his career in cybersecurity, he worked in IT as a sysadmin. During his offensive security career, he's worked in consulting and as an internal pen testing resource for financial and consumer product companies. Phil's offensive security includes pen testing, application pen testing, and red teaming. He enjoys mentoring and educating others about pen testing during workshops at conferences and other events. His offensive security educator roles include community college adjunct instructor and curriculum and offensive security content creation. Phil co-authored the book, The Pentester Blueprint, Starting a Career as an Ethical Hacker, based on his conference talk on starting a career as a pen tester, and was featured in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book. He's a podcaster and hosts The Philip Wylie Show and hosted his previous podcast, The Hacker Factory Podcast. Phil, it is a joy and a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a chance to talk to people today.
Yeah,
what's great about today?
Thanks for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your show, and it was very nice to finally meet you last year during RSA. So,
yeah, what a joy. I'll be at RSA this year. How about you? Planning on hitting it up?
Yeah, it depends on the job situation whether I'm there or not, but want to go. So if it works out, I'll be there.
Good reason to go is always the sheer quantity of good friends and good conversations that I end up having there. So we'll get a chance, hopefully, to meet up again this year there. And yeah, we talk about RSA. I'm reminded actually of a client of ours who had asked me and said, "Hey, should I send one of my engineers to RSA for training?" And I said, RSA is a great conference. I'm not sure it's the one you want to send somebody to if they've never done a conference before and they want to do offensive security training. For that's a hard one. There's a lot of resources out there, and yet at the same time, just sorting through where those resources are is a really difficult ask for people that aren't in our community. And I know that's a particular passion of yours, talking about where and how you can learn how to do this stuff. How did you get started caring this much? Not how did you get started in the field, but why do you care?
Yeah, why I care is it was kind of interesting. In 2018, I started teaching at Dallas College, January 2018. And for most of my career, and I'm a powerlifter, used to compete in powerlifting and stuff. So I've always been super competitive. I mean, even back before my professional days, I worked in a jewelry store and always tried to be the best salesperson to outsell everyone else. And then in 2018, when I started teaching, I kind of learned that my strengths are really mentoring and teaching others, and the world needs good coaches, mentors, and teachers. So that's kind of where I turned my attention to, and it's been great. It's been a blessing. I've made some really good connections, been able to help some folks out. So pretty much the focus of everything I do is typically towards helping others. So a lot of the speaking stuff I do is like at the B-Sides conferences. And so I do a lot of mentoring, helping people try to get started in the industry, and just all around just kind of encouraging people, because a lot of cases people just need to be encouraged. They don't think they could do it. And that was kind of me years ago before I ever got into IT or cybersecurity. I didn't think that I had the potential to use my mind for a living, because when I graduated high school, I didn't have any plans. I went into pro wrestling. So the physical thing was where I felt like that's where I'd make my money and all that. And so I kind of learned later on that to really have a good life, good opportunities, that you really have to focus on careers where you use your thinking. So that's kind of really what did that. And I like to encourage people sharing my story of where I came from, because, I didn't have a college degree. I kind of got some certifications and self-taught on a lot of things. So That's kind
Yeah,
of
that's I love the answer because caring about it was often the first step in understanding that's where you want to go. We often end up kind of falling backwards into this community. And yet I get asked so many times by people, how do you break into cybersecurity? We're all not tired of that question. I think for many of us, we're just emotionally exhausted by the fact that that people still don't know how to get into cybersecurity. And many people who are in it don't know they are. The number of times
Mhm.
I've been asked by somebody who's an IT sysadmin who spends their time doing network hardening and analyzing traffic, who's like, how do I break into cybersecurity? And I'm like, Jane, I got some bad news for you, or possibly good news, depends on how you see it. You're here, you're one of us. So I feel like we see that a lot. Do you have kind of a standard answer that you go to when somebody asks you that question?
Yeah, one of the things is it's going to be like the educational background. Where are you at now? Because like you mentioned, a sysadmin, in some cases, sysadmin roles are harder than some of the security roles.
Absolutely. I think it's really true. And there's great resources out there. I'm thinking of like,
Yes.
Hacks for Pancakes and just the series of work that they did in 2016, the blog posts and resources they put together still, I think stands just head and shoulders out there as a place to get started for everyone. I think people still point to it. I mean, I think they need to do like a V2 of it at this point, but it stands up so well because the answers really still are go look for people that can teach you and start
Mhm.
teaching people as fast as you can.
Yeah,
So
the big thing is I think you really just need to look for a good resource because there's a lot of people out there trying to make money off of I can help you get into cybersecurity, and they're not always subject matter experts. So I think that's really one of the things you have to kind of look for someone. And conferences are a great resource, even though X or formerly Twitter, has got a lot of a bad rap. But it's still a good place to find research and educational content. So getting involved in the community, find people that know what they're doing, that these education resources are vetted because just because it's on Udemy doesn't mean it's a legitimate course or good. Just because it's on YouTube, same thing.
mhm. Strongly agree. And as we're broadcasting on YouTube right now, I will strongly confirm that just because you hear it on YouTube doesn't mean it's true.
Yes. Yeah.
I see that. I also just as a note for people, I actually find that LinkedIn Learning is actually pretty legit
Mhm.
because they spend the time, they pay people, they do a good job. Now I can't guarantee that all the material is valuable, but I can say that if you want it, valuable for people in infosec. But I can say it's pretty good. I'm thinking like Adam Shostak's threat modeling class and stuff like that. This is legit content there that does a good job teaching people. But at the same time, it's hard after the Twitter diaspora. Many of the experts kind of left Twitter as a real platform that they engage with. Now they'll boost or they'll show up every once in a while just to check their notifications. But it's been my experience at this point that a lot of the content migrated to InfoSec Exchange, the Mastodon
Mhm.
instance. So the one run by Jerry Bell, actually. So, folks, if you want to come find me or Phil there or whoever, I'm sure we'd be able to boost you and connect you to the right people. But that's a hard ask, especially because it feels overwhelming how much material is out there.
Mhm.
Do you have like a heuristic that you use? Is there like do you use a recommendation system? Do you think about, are there like 10 people that you trust to recommend stuff to you and then that's where you start? Or how do you sort out the good from the bad with that material?
Yeah, there's some good resources out there as far as inexpensive resources. Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. TCM Academy has some really good low cost uh, curriculum on their site. So that's a good thing. And someone that's just really starting out. So like if you don't even have an IT background on YouTube, Professor Messer has a series of videos on A plus, Network plus, Security plus. So those are good places to build your base. And one of the questions I get a lot was because I came from a sysadmin background and I spent several years in cybersecurity before I moved into pen testing. And everyone asked me, do I have to work as a sysadmin? Do I need to do all these other types of do I have to have this experience? Do I have to work at help desk, desktop support? Because some people out there, their advice is, yeah, you should do that. But my opinion is that you just need those skills. You don't have to be a sysadmin, but gain those skills, learn how to use Windows or Linux at a sysadmin level, and that's going to get you pretty far. So kind of start with the basics there, and then get into something like Try Hack Me, where you can in Hack the Box, where you start applying some of those skills and learn more of the security skills that are more pertinent to what we do in the industry.
I think it's really true. I also see that I think there's a dividing line that we sometimes don't make, because cybersecurity for so long was kind of a dirty word in the InfoSec community. It kind of came from sort of the military and policy establishment in DC. I think the meaning of it has morphed a little bit. I think when I say InfoSec, I mean protecting computers. And when I
Mhm.
say cybersecurity, I mean protecting people or data, or organizations. I think it's a little bit of a broader term. And I think it's a lot easier to break into cybersecurity than it is into InfoSec.
Yeah.
Genuinely. It's more impenetrable, I think, to break in InfoSec. And your recommendations get you into that track for offensive security, I think.
And I think also too, when you mention cybersecurity versus infosec, you're also encompassing OT and ICS. A lot of the type of technology used in our critical infrastructure. So that is kind of more part of cybersecurity, since a lot of cases they're not really storing data. It's
Mhm.
just these different computers that are running these systems. And so, yeah, I think that's a better all-encompassing term.
Well, I also sit here and think to myself, the number of people who reach out and ask how to get into this field, and the gap between the number of people that are needed in this field has got to be greater than any other field I can think of. I think we were looking before at a CSO article. Right now, the workforce shortage in cybersecurity is at 4 million and counting. And this is with everybody and their mom trying to get people into cybersecurity. We're trying really hard.
Mhm.
But I think really one of the challenges is, there's a lot of people that see it as the same thing as a tech job. And I think fundamentally it's not the same thing as a tech job. I would love to hear. I mean, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Like, what do you think about this?
I think there's kind of some similarities depending on the type of job you're doing. But one of the things I think too, talking about the skill shortage and bringing people in, I think one thing that is overlooked, and I think we really need to take in consideration when trying to bring people into the industry, is define the people that are passionate, wanting to learn. Because if they're willing to learn and they enjoy it, those are the people you want. Because if someone is just doing it purely for the money, then maybe they're not willing to put in the extra hours. Because I'm not, saying that we should work people past 40 hours a week. But as far as a security professional is probably, well, as you know too, it was more than your 40 hours a day 40 hours a week that you did. You're doing other things to learn and progress. And so if you really enjoy what you're doing, you're going to excel. And some people also worry, I'm new, I'm trying to break in, or I've only got a few years. And someone like Phil has 20 years. That's not a good comparison, because I know a lot of people with 3 to 5 years experience that are better than some people with 20 something years experience. If you're putting in the time to constantly learn, and it's one of those fields that we have to constantly learn, we're constantly getting more and more new technologies. AI is becoming more popular. Several years ago is IoT, and with all these things increasing and there's technologies coming about that we don't even think about or know about now, that people need to learn how to defend. So it's a constantly growing field. And so being passionate about it, I think that's one of the key things to look for. And I was fortunate with my first pen testing job. I got laid off from an AppSec role. I applied for a consulting role with Verizon, their consulting division. And because of my passion, and then I built a home lab and did all the self-study, the hiring manager took a chance on me, because I had vulnerability. I had some security experience, sysadmin experience, vulnerability scanning experience, but I didn't have the hacking experience that I needed. And he took a chance on me because of my passion and willing to learn.
I'm glad about it. There's an element to this too that I know is really frustrating for a lot of people, which is that, in other careers you can learn sort of on the job in other tech careers. I think cybersecurity is a little different in that it rewards external curiosity, because it's so hard to evaluate a cybersecurity professional, especially with a small team or a small company. And the hard part here, I think, for a lot of people, is they're looking to break into cybersecurity, is they don't understand how much work is required outside of work.
Mhm.
And to be really clear, I've been asked this question by a lot of folks I've been asked this question by women, by people of color, by the LGBTQ community, by people that already face a lot of additional work when it comes to just their lives, primary caregivers, people that don't have the kind of resources outside of work, that somebody who's 26 and carefree and who can build a home lab can do.
Mhm.
And I get asked this question, like, first, how did you do it, Tara? And the answer is, I don't have children. I don't watch appointment television, and I work about 16 to 17 hours a day. right? I don't sleep a lot. And so how did I do it? Like this, also with a heaping dash of privilege. And I've been asked this question before by a woman who was already working 55 hours a week, who was like, I don't understand how I get over into this field, how we make it work when I'm already working this hard outside of my current job. And now you want me to do another 15, 20 hours a week of training. And I said, I think it's less about that than it is about making connections. And if you can spend even an hour a week to yourself, contributing to one thing, building relationships, getting into try hack me, just like Phil said, I think that is a key part of getting into cybersecurity, is making a commitment and sticking to it. Because if people see that, they'll trust you, and trust is such a huge component of this field. So, like, yeah, I also love, we got some questions here from LinkedIn. This is wonderful. Definitely going to ask you this one, Phil, because I know you've got some thoughts on this one. What does this rush of generative AI mean for cybersecurity and the cybersecurity landscape? It's Nate McQueen, very respected CISO and cybersecurity professional. It's wonderful to see a friend on the channel. Yeah, please. What do you think, Phil?
Sure. I think it's a good thing. So much you hear about the threat actors that people are worried about, but I think to help the security professional, it's great. I know it's already helping some folks I know on the offensive security side, but really what I'm excited about is what's going to come about from, using AI in general for defense. You hear about all the opportunities to use for actually the offensive security side, but I'm really looking forward to what it's going to provide in the defense. And so it's the biggest thing that I think is great is the scalability. It's able to scale professionals. And in some cases, you can take some people with lower skill and give them the ability to do more with these tools that are more powerful. I just recently learned of a tool that automates some parts of pen testing. And the cool thing about it is you can put it in the hands of a junior and they're able to do some of the things that otherwise would take a lot of learning to be able to get up those capabilities. But we definitely need it to scale, especially with the lack or the skills gap or the lack of adequate staffing that we got. It's really going to help with that. And I think it's going to help give opportunities to some of the folks that are more junior to be able to do things, a little more advanced than what they would without it.
The challenge there, though, and I love this question coming in from LinkedIn right now, is one of the problems we have, of course, is that AI looks for a predictive model based on what's worked before. And right now, the field of cybersecurity may not look very welcoming to those junior people that don't look like people who've been in cybersecurity for a while. So can AI not only be that tool that helps us do better in cybersecurity, but also limit the access of junior people coming into the field? Because AI is saying they're not going to be successful. What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, that's kind of tough to say. I think it's going to be some of the junior folks need to play around and learn AI. And I think this is a good opportunity too, because if you look at cloud security a few years ago, we were so behind on cloud. Cloud just kind of was there. People kind of really didn't pay attention to it. And what it gave was opportunities for people that were learning cloud to move into security, where some of the veterans in the field didn't have any experience with cloud. So I think it's an opportunity for the new people to learn that. Learning these newer technologies will give you kind of a head up when you're trying to get into these roles, because some of the folks that are on the team that have been in it for a while, they may not have the experience with AI. So I think that would be a good place to kind of learn to help you get in.
Well, there's two sides to that, right? There's not just learning AI so that you can get into these roles. It's also that AI and recruitment and hiring systems may limit the access of people that don't look like they'll be successful in
Yes.
cybersecurity, women, people of color. And this is, I think, is the difference between tech and cybersecurity. Because what I'm going to tell you to do, if you don't experience as much privilege in cybersecurity, in security as other people, is learn to hack AI. Learn what you have to do to get your resume past an AI that doesn't want you in, and all of a sudden you become even more valuable to me than somebody who just got let in the regular way. All of a sudden, you've demonstrated you got InfoSec skills, and that puts you higher, I think, up on my hiring list. So it may suck, but there's an additional opportunity for you to stand head and shoulders above the crowd this way. I don't know how you feel about that one.
Yeah. And I saw something recently. I forget the resource. It came out last year where someone had came up with some way of using AI to create resumes that you upload to these systems that give you more keywords. It's not visible. It's almost, if you think back to some of the old HTML tricks where it'd be a white web page and you would put the font white so no one actually sees it, but you got all these extra keywords to help your search engine optimization. So things like that. But I think one of the things we have to do here for the people new trying to get in, the biggest thing you can leverage, as you mentioned, building the relationships, networking. A good example is there's someone from our local community. He came out to a live podcasting event. A mutual friend, she had introduced us online, and we met. And so from introducing him to a friend of mine that's a hiring manager at a company, he was able to move to IT into security by making those connections. And back when I was teaching at Dallas College, I would have people looking for junior pen testers, and they would always want to see the resumes for my students. But I knew people from the community, knew their background, and that they want to be pen testers. So I'd share their resumes too, and I help some of those folks get hired. So it's really, and that's for me. I mean, I think even people that have been in this for a while, it's difficult to do the typical online apply for a job. I had a job one time whenever I went to work had met someone at an OWASP meeting, applied for a job at US Bank, got an interview within a week, got an offer within 2 weeks. At the same time, I applied with one of their competitors, had all the credentials and experience, and I did not get a message or call from them until a year later.
Mhm.
And so this is someone with experience. So this was probably not really dealing with AI, but just in a similar fashion, the technology they're using back then. So as a lot of us refer to as bypassing the HR firewall, is you meet people in person, you're able to get that resume to the hiring manager or someone that knows the hiring manager. And at the end of the day, people trying to hire for these roles, they want to make it easier. They've got to sort through these systems and figure out who to pick. And if they got recommendations that someone's met in person, then that makes their job a lot easier. And they're all about trying to make their jobs easier too, because everyone's pretty busy these days, and don't have the time to sort through a lot of resumes. And so if that process can be helped by referrals, then even better.
And that may go somewhat to the question. We're getting a great question from Logan Bayless off of LinkedIn as well, too, which is, how do you recommend approaching a position that's asked? This is a critique for the hiring managers. How do you approach applying for a position that's looking for a unicorn? Like the legendary version of this, of course, is the posts that were coming out in 1995 asking for 5 to 10 years of Java experience. You remember those?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that happens in cybersecurity a lot, too. A bunch of certifications for a junior role. And, are these positions worth applying for? There's a disconnect really between what people want when they're hiring. And, I wonder if there's not resume fatigue on the part of hiring managers, where they only want a few people to apply, and only if they hit this certain very high bar, because it makes it easier on them. And at the same time, they're skipping over an entire subset of people that might be wonderful fits. Part of those 4 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity. What do we say to hiring managers and to people that are trying to hire people right now like that?
I think they really need to create more accurate job descriptions. I ran into this when I was a red team lead at a company. Someone else had wrote the job description, and we had like an office in India, and so we were hiring our red team person out of India, and all I was getting was these web app pen testing resumes. And for the folks listening, when I'm talking about red teaming, I'm talking about adversary emulation, not pen testing.
Mhm.
Although you can take someone with a pen testing background and train them to do red teaming, but I wasn't getting, the right resumes. And I went back, looked at the job description, revised it, and then I started getting all sorts of opportunities. So for hiring managers, I'd say go back and look, because sometimes HR creates these roles, and I've seen some companies that it was a copy and paste from somewhere else, that they didn't even take the other company's name out of it. So I think take care in creating those resumes. And for anyone applying, apply for the roles regardless, because there may be a bunch of other people who thought, yeah, I'm not qualified for that, and maybe the resumes won't be that great of a submission. And so you're able to get in there, and maybe you're able to get the job, because a lot of people were, scared and intimidated by all the requirements. But it's kind of crazy. I remember seeing a rollback this years ago, back in my sysadmin days, where they wanted someone that was like a Cisco CCNP, and also they want them to be like an Oracle guru. So people that are doing both of those aren't going to they're not going to do both of those. They're going to do one or the other. So
I hear that, and the conversation about requiring too many qualifications for junior roles like that, it also, I think, means that The fatigue we all have about applying for information security jobs then trickles to MSPs and small businesses, as managed service providers, small businesses. This is the backbone of American cybersecurity. And on a lot of really fundamental levels, I feel like there's a big difference in the kinds of people that try for those cybersecurity roles at MSPs and at enterprises. And I think that there's a real path there to serve and learn in either side and move to the other. So when I've talked to managed service providers and small businesses, obviously small businesses can't afford to hire cybersecurity talent. They just can't. I'm technically a small business, but not in terms of cybersecurity. And when you think about a 30-person trucking company in Iowa, that's not a company that has any internal GRC or cybersecurity or compliance or even tech in-house. They've outsourced it all. So how do you start as a junior person, maybe building some chops in a world where your skills are going to be even more valued than when you're competing against 10,000 other resumes? Is there a path for that? We were talking at least a little bit about apprenticeships, which is super interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'd like to see more companies do apprenticeships because one of the things I've noticed with my students and people I've mentored that had an easier time finding jobs was if they were college students and they got internships because they're actually getting some experience, and experience is usually what keeps people from getting the jobs. So I'd really like to see apprenticeships come about because waiting for people to get through a 4-year degree to get into the workforce is really too long of a turnover. We really need something quicker. So, and we all know that there's a lot of good resources out there where you can learn cybersecurity. And some of this content, I would say, is probably better skills wise than some of the universities. So yeah. And one of the things too, with the SMBs, people working for SMBs, that may be a good opportunity because some of these bigger companies may be more pickier. But one of the things you look at too, I would say with some of the small businesses, and correct me if I'm wrong, you may need to be able to wear more than one hat. So you're not just going to be able to specialize in this one thing. And those are great opportunities too, because you get to try a variety of different things. Because I know, like from IT, you take these shops where someone's doing the routers, they're managing security in various different roles, and you get that experience. But you get more bigger companies, you're siloed. So SMBs are a good opportunity to get a more diverse range of talent, but then at the same time, they may require you to know more than just this one certain area, not to be specialized. What's your experience with that?
I've had a very similar experience, and I often get asked the question, sort of, how do I break into cybersecurity, from somebody who's in a role in marketing, who's in a role in IT, who's in a role in honestly, documentation or governance, anything like that. And I say, don't try to get a cybersecurity job someplace else. Take on responsibilities in your current organization, transfer to a role in your current org that has more cybersecurity elements to it, and use that as your opportunity to launch, because you're always going to get more opportunity to take on responsibility in your current org, get it kind of attested to, right? Like, that's a lot of what we do in compliance, is just make sure you've attested to it, and then you can move over. I've talked to people who are IT technicians inside healthcare organizations, and I'm like, believe me, they're always suffering for hands for cybersecurity, for InfoSec, for GRC in an organization like that. You can be in a regional hospital, and they're desperate for cybersecurity hands. Tell them that for the low price of $600 and a cert, go learn from Phil, that you'll take on some additional responsibility in cybersecurity, and I guarantee you they'll be thrilled. That's your launch point right there, and it's a way to get there. Does that make any sense? Have you seen people succeed?
Yes. That's actually how I got into cybersecurity. I was working in IT for a mortgage company. I was a sysadmin, and I told them I was interested in cybersecurity. They had a role open up, and I got to move over. And that's one of the things I like to share with people trying to break in is, if you're in a company, they're going to take a chance on someone without the exact experience because they know your work ethic and they want to keep you in the company. And a good company is going to want to provide a career path for you and keep you around, because that knowledge of that business and their infrastructure is very important. And they hire someone in, entry level security person, they've got to learn all that stuff. So the information about that environment, how everything works in IT, is going to make you an asset. So one of the opportunities too is see if you can shadow some of these other teams. If you don't get to move over, go over there and volunteer. Good opportunities is maybe like the SOC. If you're working a normal 8 to 5 job, maybe you go over after work and kind of shadow the SOC and see what they're doing and learn from them.
Yeah, I also note that's a good way to signal that you're ready, willing, and open, because you'll often find that an internal transfer to cybersecurity or infosec happens almost without you noticing it. And certainly you'll know about those opportunities way before anybody else does. And if anybody, if any hiring manager has a chance to internally hire somebody who's shown willingness and aptitude and integrity to a cybersecurity team, they are not going through the very expensive hiring process if they can possibly
Yeah.
help it. If they can bring somebody in and promote them internally, they will absolutely do that if possible. So what are the ways you can signal it? I've got a great question from a LinkedIn user. How do online certificates weigh in the process of kind of both advocating for yourself and with hiring managers? Are there better and worse ones? What's your opinion on that?
It kind of depends on the role that you're going into, what type of certification to get. And one of the things I would recommend on certifications, if you find the specific type of role that you want, go look at some of the job descriptions on LinkedIn and see what some of the more common certifications are. So some of the things I'm hearing good things about is some of the Google security certs, which you really they didn't have several years ago. Those are becoming more popular. You know, a lot of times people like the Security Plus for people that are just getting in. So those can be helpful. It's all kind of a checkbox. So if you have a degree in cybersecurity, if you have certifications, that kind of gives you something to stand out against the other folks. But one of the things you can also do too is document your education, share the different courses you're taking, write a blog, and share your path into cybersecurity. So that way someone can see the steps you're taking. Maybe you haven't completed the OSCP yet, but you're going through and learning. You can document some of the things that you've done in your learning process. You can write up some CTFs or different types of systems, vulnerable systems that you've hacked on. Write those up, do walkthroughs through that, because that's kind of a good way to display to hiring managers your skill set. I've seen folks that were recent college grads present at a local DEF CON group meeting on malware analysis. The hiring manager from Citigroup was in the audience, asked for the resume. They got a job. They basically kind of did a technical interview without realizing it. So, getting out, going to these different meetups, presenting, creating YouTube videos, doing write-ups on Medium, and just sharing that information. And you can actually document that. There's some really good videos I've seen out there. Jason Haddix did one a while back showing how to document the experience gained from the learning process and putting that on your resume, because there's some things you could be working on. Hack the box. Maybe you don't have the certifications, but you can at least show the amount of effort you're putting into it.
I think that it's not just the effort you put into it, it's about the energy you put out there in the world too. I want to know that somebody is trying as hard as they can to teach other people. And the only thing you need to know to mentor someone is one more thing than they know. And I will always choose to hire, promote, advocate for, and sponsor somebody who tries very hard to teach other people, because it means my energy and effort isn't being wasted. I'm not pounding sand down a rat hole. Instead, everything I say gets multiplied, gets used in multiple different places. So I've really tried to do that as well too. And I think you'll find a lot of people do that. I think one of the things I love to see also is people who bring knowledge from multiple different environments into information security. And there's a good question here from Nick Sander on LinkedIn. What about somebody in a technical adjacent job, like the audio-visual realm, which has become interconnected with networking? What are the transferable skills? How would you do that? I think it's a great question. How would you speculate on that, Phil?
Yeah. So whatever skills have you gained from that, networking is helpful, like sysadmin roles and some other different roles within security. One of the things too, when people with like a sysadmin background or network administrator background, one of the easy pivot points would be like network security, managing firewalls. And so another thing too, that companies have all these AV systems. So one of the things you could practice and learn how to do is how to secure those AV systems, because sometimes there's sensitive information, and now people can connect to these devices wirelessly. And so those are areas that really need to be protected, that most cases they may not be thought about.
I'm thinking about it and thinking we've got a CISSP running the back room back there. Hello, Ian, who's handling the production for this. I think about, I sit in the same room, about 6 inches away over here from my husband, who's an incredibly well-known YouTuber, and Deviant Olaf. And and I think about the amount of energy and effort he puts into communicating what he talks about in cybersecurity. And I would say that a substantial proportion, if not a plurality or possibly a majority of his work is putting together videos, talking, filming things, translating it. It's part of how he learns and how he
Mhm.
teaches. But somebody who's got AV skills in cybersecurity, who can break down the elements inside a physical security pen testing class, who understands how to visualize and present information really well, you have no idea how valuable you would be. I am begging you to get into this field and start working with somebody you think is a really brilliant person who can't communicate for shit. You'll have a valuable partnership there. You get to learn a lot and present that
Yeah.
information. I guarantee you they're thrilled to have you. Oh Lord. I've seen that happen a couple of times. And I love the questions that are popping in right now. And one of the ones that happened is this younger person. Should they accept a job in IT while in school for cybersecurity? Apparently their current job is willing to let them intern with IT personnel over the summer. That's a good question. I mean, it probably takes more information, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's valuable experience because it's the skills can be transferable and that gives you some professional experience. So yeah, and plus you get into the place working, you could possibly find like a cybersecurity internship for the next semester, or if there's any entry level cybersecurity roles. Because once you get in there working, people kind of get to see your skill set and may consider you for other opportunities. So, and that's one of the things I tell people too. Even if you want to be a pen tester, take whatever security role you can because that's going to be easier to get that job with security experience opposed to not having it. So I think taking the IT internship would be a good experience.
I think so too. And I think it also helps to just say yes to learning, because if you want to go into cybersecurity and somebody's about to teach you about the real world of networking and segmenting and securing networks, that information is going to be valuable the rest of your life. I think it was somebody's cracking off earlier about how a cybersecurity degree is 4 years spent learning materials that is 15 years old. And there's a lot of truth to that, but there's some stuff that is never going to stop being important.
Mhm.
Understanding data structures, understanding network access and segmentation, understanding how a directory traversal attack works is never going to go out of style, or at least
Mhm.
it's not going to go out of style in your career lifetime. I
Yes.
have found that deeply understanding the guts of Linux, how and why it works, contributing to it. I came out of Linux sysadmin as well too, and then went into systems architecture for secure systems. My transition was also very much in place. I got hired as a sysadmin to build out the systems and structures for Silent Mail at Silent Circle. And I was in information security before that. I was doing web app pen testing at Microsoft, even though that's not the name it was called. I was just there, working at Halo for Xbox, and I didn't realize the name of what I was doing was in information security. I get hired to go to build out an encrypted system, and spent my time there learning how to do it. Now, almost 15 years later, I have fully transitioned, and that was the moment I took my deep knowledge of one thing and skipped over into being able to call myself somebody in cybersecurity professionally from that
Mhm.
moment. So I think that's really important, to look for your opportunity to laterally transition. You want to jump from piece of your career to piece of your career in seniority, but if you're going to do a subject matter change, do it laterally if you can, because you've got all the
Mhm.
protection and power of staying in place, and you don't have to try to prove to somebody without being in place that you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got, gosh, so many questions in this one. I love this. I think somebody is noting right now that the work they did for a musician actually came in really, really handy. Protocols and hardware integrations, minimizing jitter. Oh my gosh, that's a networking problem. It's a speed of light problem, a speed of sound problem. All these problems we have in cybersecurity. This is so fascinating. We have all these things. We've got a line of questions in this that we always line up in advance, for our guests on the show. And I can't keep up with the number of questions that are coming in right now for you, Phil.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with them. This is great. I would love to know, like, where we've just blasted through so much of this. As you're seeing us talking about this, our customers and our clients, the people that talk to us, are managed service providers. They're the people that are stuck between small businesses with no expertise and the wildly unrealistic expectations of zero trust, next gen AI, firewall, and military grade bullshit from enterprises. And I wonder how we can translate what you and I are saying right here to accessibility to deep cybersecurity skills and training for people inside MSPs. I mean, it's a hard ask. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's really important, especially considering, something I really didn't think about, that connection until today, their connection to the small businesses. So it's really important to do that. And so, yeah, I guess one of the things as far as, cybersecurity community that, we need to make sure that to share the resources with these MSPs to help them get educated. And one of the things too the MSPs can do as well is share information and education with their customers, with the small businesses. And so that's like one of
We've
the things I've done when I've worked with companies before, was teaching, holding courses and classes, just little webinars for, sales engineers, to teach them more about cybersecurity, where they can better understand where these products fit in that tech security stack.
I appreciate that so much, because MSP is having to translate all of sort of the vendor showroom floor hype and lights to what's meaningful on the ground. I mean, just those individual webinars I've found are profoundly powerful. Not only as sales opportunities for MSPs, they genuinely are, but they're education opportunities. And there's a need for an interlocutor between sort of the expectations and standards put out by government, the expectations downstream of like the giant companies like Google and Microsoft. You try to get into that supply chain, you've got some expectations that are just they're unrealistic for a lot of MSPs that haven't started down that path yet. And at the same time, the best way to learn anything is to teach it. I think if I was going to talk about anything that mattered most for MSPs, it would be at a human level. And we got a good question from LinkedIn right here. Oftentimes, the social engineering security compromises that exist out there thwart the most robust efforts. Do you need to train individuals in your org to be aware of these potential security breaches? That's a hard question, because
Yeah.
do you need to train as an MSP? There's a responsibility internally for your technical users. What about your non-technical users? What about your non-technical clients? How much do you need to train, a 15-person moving company about social engineering? And who do you train inside it? What do you do when it comes to the personal and human level of information security?
Yeah, I think your real education needs to go, across the company, not just IT or security. You need to educate folks. But I think another thing we have to look at too is with our endpoint protection systems and our email systems, we need to get these secured enough if someone does click on the link, that you've got something in place to block it. Because that's one of the gaps I see with some of these phishing email tools, that all it does is send these phishing campaigns, and all it is really security awareness, but they don't know what happens if someone clicks on a link. So you really need to be doing things to test that what happens if someone clicks on a link, is it being blocked? And, I think that's important. Really need to be in a organization or a environment where you can build things in place to prevent some of this stuff, and not have to completely depend on security awareness, because the threat actor is getting better, the scams are getting even they're getting better at it. You get some of the deep fake stuff, and things are getting really scary out there. There was something a while back where some financial institution, I believe it was, ended up transferring like $50 million because of some deep fake or something someone used. So we can't just rely on education. Is important, but we need the underlying technology to protect against those types of attacks.
Yeah, I think this the $25 million Hong Kong hack from about 3 weeks ago, I think
Yeah.
is what it was, something along those lines. I think about
Yes.
that. There's a lot of great questions. I get this question constantly about how AI is going to impact cybersecurity. And there's also a question about how AI addresses not just the skills gap, but the burnout gap, I think. And there was a good question. I think it was at CNBC on better pay, AI. There's a lot of different options kind of coming down the pike right now about how we address that shortage. And when I think about the opportunity to use AI to handle a little bit better the heuristic overload of being in a SOC, you're a junior SOC analyst and handling that. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there. At the same time, we're also seeing a new class of threats. I mean, spear phishing has improved so dramatically with the deep fakes that exist that that's a difficult ask. And I am super interested in how we end up balancing developing good AI tools, using them to try to address a skills gap, and actively hammering down the AI that is actually harming people. So I'm interested in it. I'm not sure we can solve that problem in the next 3 to 5 minutes though.
Yeah.
I think
I've actually heard of some new products recently where it's kind of like a co-pilot for security analysts. So you're able to input what you need, and it's got this large learning model that is, developed for cybersecurity to help people during the role. And I think that's kind of the future of helping, because before, what do? What have we done for years? Google. If we can't find out on our own, if our friends don't know it, we Google it and do research. So hopefully AI, these type of platforms like that co-pilot, specialized for cybersecurity, will help people find these answers quicker and give them better instructions on how to fix these things. And I also think just developing good internal documentation, having a wiki. I've been on pen test teams before where there'd be junior folks coming in and everyone's going to have to figure out how to validate or exploit this certain system. People keep throwing notes, but they're not sharing. So they really need to have these wikis, this information in place where they can share this information, because what you've done, someone else is going to have to replicate. And if it's in one central location, then that's a good way for people to be able to replicate what you're doing. So I think that's just one of the things.
It is. And yet there's also some hope coming along. I think the NSF just granted UNLV $3 million to start looking at a scholarship program for cyber defense. There's hope, there's information, and there's good collaborative learning tools, I think, really kind of coming out now in a way that I think we can be proud of. People are paying attention to this. And there's more attention being paid to how we train people, which I think is the real key. It's investing in people and trusting them to manage their careers and learn as they go, which I think is just huge. Yeah. So before we go ahead.
So one of the things I think we really need to do too is start talking at the high school level, middle school level about cybersecurity roles. And because a lot of these basic skills that someone would need to get into a cybersecurity role, because years ago, there were some of these programs that people would go to these Cisco academies in high school and come out with a CCNA and get a job, as a network engineer. We need to really try to do more in that area at that level to get people prepared and I think people need more guidance, because you hear a lot of cases where people get this massive student debt, and some of the times some of these different degrees they go into, it's not going to pay them anything. I mean, I've known people that got certain degrees that they're working in a museum with a master's degree, making $50,000 a year. And if they're enjoying what they're doing, but the student debt that comes with that, I think younger people that are people trying to transition need a little more mentoring and help to show them the possibilities of things out there, because too many cases, a lot of people are not aware of the cybersecurity opportunities.
I got some bad news for you. I kind of want to go work in a museum for $50,000 a year right now.
Yeah.
That actually sounds pretty great. I got to be real with you. Can you imagine that? Just like an oat milk latte, like docent something,
Yeah.
Curate a little something. No, this is a great conversation. And although we do have to start wrapping it up, folks, we got even more questions, and I know we'll be able to answer them, on and offline as we go forward. We'll, please always ask questions. Phil and I will be online as well too, just kind of an ongoing basis. Please feel free to follow him everywhere he's at. I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's going to be a fun question. But first, let me ask you, is there anything lastly that you'd like to tell us, anything you'd like to point us at, any information? And obviously, folks, please go take a look at the Phillip Wylie Show. So, Phil, any notes for people on where to find you and what they should be paying attention to?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter, now X, LinkedIn, and also check out my YouTube channel and my podcast. On my YouTube channel, I have a semester of my lectures from Dallas College when I was teaching pen testing there. And my course manual was based on the Pen Test Plus. And I've actually talked to some folks that used it in their studies to help them get the Pen Test Plus certification. So it's a whole semester of lectures. So definitely a nice free resource to check out. I'm not only doing lectures based on that textbook, I'm sharing my real world experience in walking through some different hacking demos within that class too. So
absolutely wonderful. Yeah, folks, follow Phil wherever you can find him. He'll be right there on LinkedIn, X, YouTube. Looking forward to continuing the conversation as always, my friend. Okay, last question. It's the fun one. I have gotten a lot of different answers to this question. People have given you've already brought up museums at this point, which is now just obsessing me. But if you didn't do what you do for a living, and there was an alternate universe version of you, whatever it was, what would that person be doing for a living, for a lifetime, for a career? What's the thing that you'd be doing? If money wasn't an object, what would you be doing right now?
if money wasn't an object, probably teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. That's the best answer I've gotten so far. And I heard somebody say they wanted to be a spaceship captain, and it wasn't even me. So teaching, that's a great answer. I love every part of that. Phil, this has been a joy and a pleasure to have you with us this week. Thank you so very much for being on Cybersecurity Office Hours. Bunches of questions, folks. Please do follow up. We're looking forward to speaking with you, everybody. I've been Tara Wheeler with Red Queen Dynamics. I look forward to speaking with you. Please let me know